Hi, welcome to my Godot from Zero tutorial. In the last part I showed you how to set up just a few basic things in a world. Essentially we just have a main scene, and as part of that we have the player, which can move around inside of this scene. Simple enough so far. Now this part we want to go into how we can actually interact with things in the world. Now a simple interaction I'm going into today is how we can push things around by just having them be there. So for starters, let's take a look. Let's create a new scene and just call it box. I'm actually going to change the type of this. So I right click, change type. And what I want here is a specific type of collision shape that is tied to the physics engine. So if we type rigid body here, we get the 2D and the 3D version. We take 2D again. This rigid body basically means that Godot is going to automatically take care of physics for us as long as we just set it up once. So first of all, we have this little warning here. It says it needs some collision shape to be attached to it. So let's do that. Let's add a child node and just say collision shape, the thing it told us, 2D. And let's add that, and the exclamation point here is gone, but it has a warning here now. It needs to have a shape. So we have this open, we can look in the inspector. Here's the shape. We can make this a rectangle shape. That way it's essentially a box. Good start, but we want to be able to see our box as well. So let's add a sprite. So this is going to work the same as the player. We can just use the Godot icon as our shape. And now we can actually see that the collision shape needs to line up. Or well, at least it would make more sense if it were to line up. So we can just move it with these little knobs here by selecting it in our scene editor. Nice. Let's save this. Now at this point, what we might notice is the box here, as a rigid body, is tied to the physics system. The player is not. We can fix that in a moment though. First of all, let's go into the world, put some boxes in here. And let's see, the box, actually I am going to check because I'm not sure. The box is currently affected by gravity. I'd say we don't want gravity here. Let's give that a shot. It doesn't fall. Good. Let's run this. Nothing happens. Good. So that nothing happens is pretty much as intended, because we still need to take this player and also turn it into a body. Now this here was turned into a rigid body. What exactly that means is basically all of the things the physics engine can take care of is taken care of on a rigid body. You use forces on it, but you can't directly control how it moves. You can only control it by applying forces. We don't really want that for our player. What we can do for the player instead, to attach it partly to the physics engine, is to change its type into a kinematic body. It has a little player icon as well, so that's a good indication that it is what we want. Actually, I'm also going to recolor this. The box, I want to be able to tell it apart from the player. So on the modulate thing, so if I just go Sprite and in the Sprite inspector I click on modulate, I can just make it slightly red or dark or black or something. Actually, let's put that here so we can see it properly. Yeah, let's make it red for now. That way we can tell it apart easily in the world. And the player, being a body now as well, is gonna complain about the same stuff the rigid body did. As such, let's add a child node and add a collision shape 2D. And this is also going to be a box for now. So rectangle shape. Then let's just make it fit. Bit more. That'll do. Okay, so now the player has a shape as well. Now there's still gonna be some issues here, but let's see what happens if we try to move it now, not here, in the world. Aha! Things are starting to actually move around. So if I nudge into this box, it starts sliding. There's currently not a whole lot of friction going on, so it slides for a very long time. It doesn't slow down a whole lot. To change that, we can add friction later. But for now, yeah, this kind of works. That said, there are still some wonkinesses that can happen here, because currently we are directly setting our position, and you're not really supposed to do that. So instead what we can do is we can use a function called move and slide. And this currently wasn't recommended, so I'm actually going to remove it again. Because this still thinks we are just a normal Node2D since we didn't change the player script. So if we go in the player, it's technically a kinematic body 2D, but our script still is inheriting from Node2D, which means we only have access to any functions and variables that are part of the Node2D parent, so essentially. But if we change this to kinematic body 2D, which we are one, so we can do that. But yeah, now it should actually say move and slide. There, now it actually recommends this, as it should. And we can, let's see. Yeah, now we probably want to change this up a little bit. So instead of saying position, we can say we are working with a velocity now. So we can create a new variable here and call it velocity. It works the same as the variable up here for the most part. So we just give it a name and set it equal to something. What changes is what we're setting this equal to. Because by default, position, as it has this x and y position, means it's a vector 2 in Godot. So we can, if we type vector 2, it already comes up. So this, we can say vector2.0, which just is basically the same as saying vector 2 and typing 0, 0. And yeah, now we have a vector, as used in mathematics, with an x position and a y position, and they are both 0 at the start. So now we can do the same thing. We just replace position here with velocity. And we just go and copy paste that. So now in the same sense, we are still changing our vector, but then we apply this vector here using move and slide. Okay. Let's give that a shot. Okay, I do see some movement. It's technically working, but there's an issue here. You might see that it's really slow if I don't have zoom enabled right now, so yeah. The issue here is that we are using delta in these. The thing that isn't immediately obvious about the move and slide function is it already applies delta for us, so we don't have to. So multiplying with delta here, as we do, basically means we are multiplying delta twice, since move and slide already does that. So if we remove it, we're fine now. Or should be. There we go. Now we can move around normally again. And interact with this stuff. And now this also moves slightly slower because we don't go inside of it as much. But other than that, it's still pretty much the same thing, it's just cleaner code now. Causes less issues down the line. Now, as a last thing, I would say we need to give these things a bit more friction, because otherwise this isn't very fun. Exactly, so this one here is now dampened, which is essentially just friction. So this damp means the linear movement gets slowed down quite a bit now every frame. So I can still push this around, but as soon as I let go, it's gonna quickly stop moving. You can adjust just how much you want this to be dampened here. Let's try 1.5. And we can do the same thing for the angular, that's how much it rotates. Just testing here for now. Because right now, if you see, if I do this, the rotation still goes quite a bit further, even if it's moving in a straight line rather little. If I do this, let's see. Yeah, now it rotates a lot less. You really gotta tell it to rotate. If I set this to a really large number, it should become quite obvious. Yeah, now it basically rotates almost not at all, it just goes into a linear movement almost immediately. But yeah, for now let's keep these numbers the same, so it's nice and balanced. And works fine. Okay, but we don't really want these numbers to be changed here necessarily. We want them to be changed on this thing. Because what we actually have here is we have several instances of our box. But each instance has its own settings. We can change... For example, we can change the color of this one to be darker. And in the same sense, we can change the linear and angular things for each one of these separately. As long as we are in this world thing where they exist as separate entities. But if we change something in here, if we change something on the original box we created, this is going to apply to all of them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set these all to 1.5. And the same thing on Angular 1.5. 1.5. And now they should all get dampened by default, without us having to do that for each one of them separately. Bring. Bring. And this one. Brown. They all don't slide off into eternity anymore. Actually, yeah, let me show you, because we can also push them inside of each other. If we push them into each other, they interact as well. So the entire physics simulation happens automatically here. We don't really have to do anything much here. This is all already part of the Godot engine, so as long as we put everything into a kinematic body if we want to move it around, and a rigid body if we want it to just react to stuff, then this pretty much gets handled all on its own. With very little work and no code required. Like, all we did in code today, the box doesn't even have any code. So all we really did in code was to make sure to change this stuff up to use move and slide instead of directly working on our position. So, that is some simple interaction with stuff done. More in the next part. That will be all for today. Bye.